Okay, so hello everybody on the webinar. My name's Ian Vincent. This is a webinar on SAP NetWeaver Process Orchestration, subtitled Empower Your Business. I'll be presenting some slides to run through a few sort of concepts around process orchestration and the SAP offering, and then I'll be handing over to my colleague Philip, who's going to run through a quick demo of a solution that we are proposing for utilising SAP Process Orchestration to solve a real-world business challenge. So if you have any issues or anything, I think there is a kind of functionality to put your hand up on the webinar. So if you do that, then I'll pick that up and we can deal with any issues that you may be having. So I'm just going to make a start now, and off we go. Okay. Right, so the SAP NetWeaver Process Orchestration tool is something that's been delivered by SAP to fill a gap in their offering around the concept of business process orchestration. So what I'll run through first is kind of the idea of what we're going to go through. So this is the agenda for the hour. So we're going to look at some common business challenges that BPO is supposed to solve. We'll look at some patterns in which business process orchestration, or BPO, is used. Some use cases for process orchestration in the business landscape. The SAP offering, and then a demonstration based around a business challenge of advisor recruitment from one of our clients. So we'll run through what the challenge is and then our proposed solution. We'll wrap up with some key advantages of SAP Process Orchestration, and then some further information where you can get some more information from us and on SAP Process Orchestration generally. So we'll just get into that. So first up, so kind of common business challenges. These are things that are particular challenges that are related to business process orchestration and how a tool set in that area can solve them. So one of the key challenges to businesses in the modern market is obviously responding to change. So that can come from a number of different places. So it can be market forces enforcing change, evolving regulatory environments, or just convergence within the business itself. So mergers and acquisitions, changes to the structure, and so on. What we do know is that change is obviously a constant challenge within the modern business. Also, we have the concept of managing process touch points. So where you have a business process at the moment, you'll have a number of sort of handoffs in that process where you'll be switching from one team to another team, from a team to a system, from a system to another team. And each of these handoffs can introduce delays or breakdowns in the process, and often the end result of that is you'll get a poor customer experience. The third challenge that is particularly addressed by BPO is the idea of process optimization. So when you have processes that cross your systems and different roles within your organizations, it can be difficult to quantify how that process is performing, which then makes the challenge of optimizing that process much harder, particularly because you increase the chance of creating undesired impacts. So obviously if you modify a process without fully understanding how it's running, you can introduce new problems into that process. So moving on, we're going to look at the BPO patterns, or business process orchestration patterns. So these are ways in which business process orchestration can operate within your company, within your business. So first up is the concept of composite process applications. Now these are kind of role orientated. So if you look at the example on the screen, you have kind of a request, validate and approve kind of idea where you have one person with the role who makes a request. That request could be for a new vendor or a new supplier to be added to a system. It could be to a purchasing request. It could be any number of things. You would then potentially have a validation made by a system in the back end, and then there would be somebody who would approve that request, and which would then be syndicated to the relevant back-end system to process the request. So this is kind of common use for BPO. Also, you have the idea of BPO forming the business process backbone. So that's really talking about delivering work and moving messages around your systems of record to improve efficiency. So here you can see quite common enterprise service bus model where you receive a message, route a message, transform a message, and then deliver it. So there may not necessarily be any people involvement in such a process. And finally, the idea of a business navigation system, so using BPO to provide this. So this is more of an event-driven process. So in the example here, you see there is an event that happens in the business. Now that could be a failed purchase order, it could be an issue with an invoice, it could be any number of things that happen within your business processes. So that event triggers the process, it routes to a particular user who can then take action and resolve the issue. Or it could just be a notification style process, but that's kind of generally the kind of idea when we're talking about business navigation systems as a pattern for BPO. Right, so moving on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about some use cases. So while it's quite easy to talk about patterns, sometimes it's best to then illustrate those with an idea of what you can use process orchestration for. So here first a couple of ideas. So you can use BPO or a process orchestration tool to unlock some functionality that exists in your legacy technology and integrate it with a business process. You can use it to link customer services into OTC processes. So in the previous slide we looked at the idea of having an event-driven process. So this would be where that kind of concept comes from. So you'd maybe have something triggering, so say for example a large order that comes in and you know that you have maybe a limited amount of stock for a particular material, so you can use event-driven processing to manage those orders that come in for that material while you have low stock levels. Maybe that kind of idea. And also you potentially want to control flow of data. In this example we're talking about employee data. So maybe you have employee records across multiple systems. So you may have a recruitment system, an HR system, an expenses system, and maybe your ERP backend would all have a record of the employee, and you need to maintain or synchronize that data across those multiple systems. So you could use a BPO solution to do that. So you would manage the data of an employee from the point of it coming into the system through recruitment, and then spreading that record throughout all the different systems that need that data, and then managing any changes in that data across those systems to keep everything in sync and to deal with any sort of conflicts that may occur with the synchronization. You could then push out to a human interaction, and that human being would then resolve the issue by looking at what the conflict is. Other ideas or use cases include sort of automating investment decision processes, so taking an investment decision from a proposal through to purchase order, management of exceptions in automated processes, and finally kind of an idea of integrating with social media. So you could use other systems within the SAP landscape to integrate with social media and look for negative sentiments within, say, Twitter or on Facebook, and then use that to feed back to the relevant business functions. So for example, if you released a new product, then you'd want to see how that's received by the general public, and potentially you could route any particularly negative or even indeed positive, because it doesn't all have to be negative, feedback that you can gather from social media to the right people within the organization. So those are just some ideas of different ways in which you could use process orchestration within the business. So there's quite a few there, but there are obviously many other ways of using it. It's just to give you a flavour of the different ways in which you could use process orchestration in your business. So moving on, so we're going to look at the SAP Process Orchestration offering, which is known as SAP NetWeaver Process Orchestration, which we'll refer to as SAP Vo throughout the rest of the slides. So SAP Vo comes from a number of existing tool sets that have been kind of pulled together to create this sort of single offering. So first up is the idea of business process modeling and execution, which has been provided in the past by SAP BPM. This has been combined with a service-orientated backbone and integration tool, which is SAP PI. and then a flexible business rules engine, which is SAP BRM. So each of these three tool sets have been brought together into SAP PO to provide one kind of integrated process orchestrating offering. And this is illustrated by SAP in this diagram. So this shows you the different kind of things or capabilities of process orchestration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlay an idea of how you would use each of these components to try and make it a little bit more understandable or kind of more relevant to the way in which you would use it. So we'll start with business process and rules automation. So what we mean by this is it allows you to model your business processes and indeed business rules within the tool set. So you can take a process, you can model that process and then systemize it, and also you can introduce business rules. So they can be quite simple, so things like if you have an order for over X amount of money, then you would route that to a particular process or a particular level of scrutiny would be needed for that, or under that level you would allow the process to continue as normal. So it's quite a simple example. That's kind of the idea of a business rule. Then there is a UI composition element. So what this means is that you can create intuitive and attractive user interfaces for your user base. So it makes the whole experience of using or interacting with the process more attractive and user-friendly. Then you have these A2A integration and B2B collaboration boxes. So what this means is you can integrate with your existing systems, so you can take your process and your process can integrate with the systems within your landscape. But not only that, you can integrate with your partners. So if you have a business process that crosses from your internal systems over to one of your partner systems, you can use process orchestration to manage that interaction. So down at the bottom here we have the idea of service-oriented architecture governance. So what this means for you from a business perspective is that it ensures the reuse of your investment. So if you create a series of content or processes within process orchestration, the governance element of the tool allows you to easily identify and reuse elements of that in other processes. So obviously it reduces the amount of effort it takes to deploy a new process, and also make sure that you're making the most use of your investment. And finally, the idea of monitoring and analytics. So not only does that mean you can identify when processes are going wrong, but also allows you to analyze your processes to ensure that you can optimize them correctly. So after running your process for a period of time, you can look at the monitoring and analytics and understand where maybe you're losing time in the process, or where you can take out unnecessary steps, or where you would want to introduce a new step to improve the process flow. Okay, so staying with the offering, so what does actually all of this mean? So what it means is we can develop solutions that are business orientated and user centric. So by that we mean that by focusing on a business process, you are focusing on what the business needs. So the solution that you're delivering within SAP Process Orchestration is focused on business need and is business orientated. In the same way, by having human interaction as within the process and the intuitive UIs that you can create using the tool, this means that you use very user-centric concept. So you're not just doing it on a system-to-system based design. So you're not just focusing on what the systems need, but also what the users who are part of that process need. So it can support collaborative and dynamic processes. So what we mean by that is obviously you can have a great many people involved in your process. So if you need collaboration to be part of the process, so for example, if you're talking about approval processes, or people needing to make a decision, then you can introduce a number of different actors into the process who can collaborate to get the right result for your business. And there also can be dynamic. So this dynamic element comes in from the business rules engine we spoke about, and this allows you to kind of on the fly change your business rules and then affect the way in which your processes work. So if, for example, things change within the general environment in which you're operating, and you need to adjust your processes to allow them to go through faster or to be more cautious, then you can do that within the business rules. You don't have to remodel your process. You can just control it from the business rule itself, which you can change in a kind of real-time way. So the processes that you can develop and the solutions that you can develop span system, function and business borders. So this means that obviously you can make use of the mature integration tool, SAP PI, that SAP deliver as part of process orchestration, and in doing so, you can introduce a process that crosses multiple systems, different functions within your business, and even within different businesses within the ecosystem in which you work. And then finally, enables the reuse of data and business functionality already available in the landscape. So that's not just things that you've developed within process orchestration itself, but if you have particular key business functionality that exists within your different back-end systems, then you can utilize that functionality and integrate it using process orchestration with your process so that you can become part of the process flow and you can get the maximum value out of the functionality you already have. Okay. Also, what the offering does is it allows you to reduce TCO. So although you're making use of what were 3 separate tools, there is a single licensing model for process orchestration, which obviously reduces your TCO cost, and it's on a single architecture. So it's just a Java-based application. There's no ABAP stack within it, so it's a more a simpler architecture, and as such reduces the amount of TCO in keeping it running. And finally, there is an active SAP investment through the SAP Vo roadmap in this tool. This is something that SAP are moving forward. The focus going forward is really to facilitate a holistic kind of integration and process orchestration solution, and in doing so they're making a big focus on this Java-only stack, making it more interconnected and improving the productivity of development within this area. So we come to the challenge and the demonstration part of the webinar. So we were approached by a customer, an existing customer, to look at a particular pain point they're having in their business around the idea of advisor recruitment. So this particular customer spends a lot of money, as you can see from the quote, looking to recruit new advisors into their business. And the way in which they manage that process currently is a very manual process, which obviously involves a lot of administration. It can be quite time consuming, and there's no real way of understanding how well their investment in trying to recruit these new advisors is performing. So what we're looking to do here is to provide a solution that reduces the amount of administrative work, and in doing so allows them to better understand how that investment is being spent and how effective it is, but also to make the most of that investment. So I'm going to hand over to Philip, and he's going to run through a demonstration for you. And so here you go, Philip.
Hi everybody, it's Phillip Parkinson. So as Ian just said, an existing customer of ours asked us to look at how we could automate and streamline a process of theirs for signing up new advisors within their organization. So in order to do that, we use process orchestration. And if I could just show you very quickly. So what we've done here is using the development tools for process orchestration, which is in the NetWeaver Developer Studio. This is a really simple process that we've taken. The approach that we have for the demo is to keep everything as simple as possible. So looking at the process within the developer tool, this developer tool will be used to develop all of the artifacts required for your process orchestration process. So what we have at the beginning here is the start. So the process is kicked off via a web service. This web service is called, in our case, via a external website. So somebody wanting to be a salesperson for this particular organization would sign on to a website or log on to a website and fill out some details, submit the form. That submit then calls the process within process orchestration, and it then goes to a task inbox for somebody within the organization. So somebody in the operations team then gets an alert in their task inbox that there's a new request to sign up as a salesperson within the organization. They then look at the data and decide whether or not they'd like to approve or decline that request. In our case, we're going for a positive scenario, so they approve the request. And once they've approved that, it then calls the process orchestration system and particularly calls the integration engine of PO in order to submit this process to CRM. In our case, we're using CRM as our backend system. And once the submit to CRM has been committed, an email would be sent to somebody within the operations team that then notifies them that a new advisor has been signed up. So the first thing I'll do is just start up my email so that we can see the task request coming through. So yeah, we've just simplified the scenario. Obviously the scenario could be expanded upon depending on what the business requirement is. So to run through the scenario very quickly, we have a simple form that we use to simulate a website, for example. So the person would fill in some basic details. Obviously this could also be expanded upon. You could have a lot more details within this form. This form could be hosted on a company's website, on an intranet, on the extranet, for example, or it could even be submitted via a mobile device as well. So if we submit this form, okay, we should then, if we go into our administrator, so this is the person that's going to check in their task inbox as to whether or not a new request has come through. And if we just wait for that to load up. And actually looks like we don't have anything coming through. I'm just going to refresh this very quickly. Did I say block? Okay, so we'll just put the details in again there quickly. And we get a notification that it's been sent. So if we then go into the task inbox for this particular person within the operations team, we see a new request that comes through. So if we go to that particular request, it would then load up the details of the person that's trying to sign up as a new salesperson. In this case, we approve the request, and what's happening then is that it goes to the process orchestration system, and the integration engine then submits this to the CRM system so we can see in real time exactly what's happening. So at this point it's gone to the process orchestration system and the integration engine has then submitted that, and it's the first call for the day, so we just wait a couple of seconds and we should get an email. So we then see an email come through showing that this has been submitted to CRM for the particular person that we signed up. And in this particular case, we now have a BP ID. So what we can do is go into our backend system and actually confirm that this has been submitted to CRM. So within transaction BP, we can put in the BP ID that we got from the email, confirming that this person has been created in CRM, and we can then see that the person has been submitted to the backend system. So essentially what we've done is automated a currently manual process for an existing customer, which then allows this operations team member to focus on other tasks within the organization. And we've done that by combining both human interaction tasks and system-related tasks, all within process orchestration. So that concludes the demo. I will then pass back to my colleague.
Thanks, Philip. Okay, so we've just seen a kind of example of how SAP Process Orchestration can be used. Obviously, it's a demonstration, so you can add a lot more to these processes. So, for example, it may be something that the operations team would want to perform a credit check on people who are applying. So you can introduce a credit check task within the process flow. There may be something where you may need to do an interview, so you may have a pro forma kind of request sent to the person who's applied to come in for an interview, and all sorts of other things can be added to this process. So what you've got here is the kind of very a quite simple one, but obviously you can see where over time you can introduce new tasks, new steps to the process that improve the quality of the business process, and also make it more effective and reduce the amount of work that needs to be taken by the different people within the process itself. So we're just going to come to some of the key advantages. So as a kind of a summary of what we see as the key advantages of SAP Process Orchestration. So as you've just seen from the demonstration, we've merged a number of distinct technologies and actions into one cohesive process. So we have an SAP backend, we have an external web page front end, we have human interaction. All of these things have fitted into one cohesive process that's run through without any real effort on the behalf of the people involved, and allows that business process to run quite inconspicuously in the organisation. We can manage process behaviour dynamically through business rules. This element wasn't really necessary as part of the demonstration, but potentially you may want to add in business rules into that process. Say, for example, you have an excess of advisors in the Oxford area. You may want to automatically kind of filter out people who are applying from certain areas. Then there's the idea of we were integrating automated system actions with human activities. So we saw that there, where we have human activity of saying whether or not we want to create this individual as an advisor, and that's been integrated with the actual back-end system activity of creating that person as an advisor. We have the idea of process monitoring and analytics, so we can see where processes can be improved. What we saw in the demonstration from Phillip was that as that person had made their decision, they could look at the process and see where it was within the process flow and understand how that process was operating. Once that process is up and running for a while, you can then generate analytics out of the tool that will then show you how it's running, how long it takes to execute each step, and you can look at improving that as you need to. So that may not even be a technical change to the process. It may be something around improving the SLAs of the different steps and making sure the work is prioritized within the different people, or looking at different, or maybe it is to do with the system and you want to reduce the amount of human interaction or increase it, depending on the quality being delivered by the process. And also finally, it's a single technology platform, a single development environment and a single licensing model that allow you to produce these processes using these different technologies. So at this point, I'd like to stop and see if anyone would like to ask any questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can either put your hand up or just speak. Okay, right. Well, I take it that no one's got any questions. So that's fine. So we'll just move to conclude the webinar. Right. So this is some further information. So some services that we offer here, which we call our next generation integration services, delivered by AgilityWorks. So particularly in relation to what we've just been talking about, SAP Process Orchestration, we offer a service which allows us to develop a proof of concept for a particular challenge you have in your business, and we would host that proof of concept on our internal infrastructure using our kind of partner licensing from SAP, so that you wouldn't have to invest in initial infrastructure and licensing just to produce a proof of concept. There's also the idea of doing a complimentary on-site session which goes into much more detail about process orchestration. We'll look at the benefits it can bring to your business, and that would be actually specific to your particular business, and an in-depth look at the tool and the roadmap. And we have a number of other services in the integration area which are on this web link, and obviously this information in the web link will be sent out to the attendees later today, so you'll be able to take a look at those services on the website. And also Philip's written a blog on our website about process orchestration, so you can take a look at that. So I'd just like to leave you with some contact details, which again will be in the communication following the conclusion of the webinar. And thank you all for your time. And say yes, sir, thank you very much for your time and paying attention to what we've got to say. And hopefully we'll hear from you and speak again in the future. Many thanks.